What's happening, everybody? It's your boy, Matty Milligan, and this is the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Ooh, very spooky and creepy because it's the month of October. Ooh. And this is episode number 13. And today, 13, I cannot pronounce words whatsoever. Today, we are talking about the 7 laws of the advertising universe, which come from one of my favorite book series, The Wizard of Ads. I actually have all 3 of them right here, conveniently. And as you can see, they have a very unique style, and just the title Wizard of Ads is very appealing for me. And as you can see, not just in terms of the design is similar, but the actual dimensions and volume of each book is very similar in terms of number of pages. So they look cool on your bookshelf. This is one of my biggest beefs with book design is when I originally got the Game of Thrones books, they'd only written 4 of them at that point, and then they were about to release the 5th one. So I bought the 4-pack, and I plowed through those. I don't remember the order of the books. I think book 1 is Game of Thrones, and then the whole series is a Song of Fire and Ice. But book number 1 is Game of Thrones, and then I don't remember what the other ones are, but I think there's like A Clash of Kings is number 2 or 3, and then there's like A Feast for Crows, I believe, and then I think the 5th one was A Dance with Dragons. So when I got A Dance with Dragons, they come out with this huge hardcover version. It's like absolutely massive, doesn't match the paperbacks that I already had. Absolutely awful. And I love the books, The Wheel of Time. It's this 14 series, or 14 book series where and basically what happened is Robert Jordan, the author, passed away during writing book 12, I believe, and then this other dude, Brandon Sanderson, wrote book 13 and 14. And I think Apple oh no, it was Amazon bought the rights to these, so you're going to see a show out of this at some point. Not as adult in terms of Game of Thrones, but still probably my favorite series. And when I look at those books on my shelf, they all match in the paperback version. And so if you ever get a fantasy book design, there's this company, I believe it's called Tor, Tor, and they do a lot of the printing and design for these books. So if you want an awesome book, look for your fantasy book, if you ever get into those, that's one thing I would get into. But again, this is all about advertising, right? I'm into more nonfiction advertising and business-based stuff on this channel. So these books, though, kind of appeal to someone like me, where they have both of those. So again, the design is super cool. Even inside the books, just these little footnotes that they have and writings from not only the author, but the publisher and the editor as well. I thought that was just a touch. But you can see here, if you're looking on YouTube, and if you're not looking on YouTube, you're probably going to want to check me out there and watch this video instead. But even the layout, you can see, is very symmetrical on the pages for the 7 laws of the advertising universe. So let's crack into these one by one right now. I recommend checking out these books. All right, and then there's actually an underline under the 7 laws of the advertising universe where it's whence cometh the power of ads to work magic. So it's like, where does all this come from? All right, so number 1 is an energy of words has existed since the day he said, let there be light. Learn how to use this energy. You are created in his image. So this is very powerful stuff, right? If you look at some of the classic texts, not just all of the contemporary and modern stuff from the last few hundred years, but all the classic religious texts, those are really what move people in the direction that you want. Words have a certain power to them, so when you tap into that power, you can really move people in the direction you would like. This is what marketing is, right? Marketing is having a very crystal clear message that you can communicate to that perfect person. And again, it needs to stimulate their imagination, and that from there you can move them in the direction that you want. And it's really about choosing the right combination of words and giving them to the right person at the right time in their life. And again, if you look at all the classic texts, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Torah, whether it's the Quran, any sort of religious text that exists out there, it all goes down to the power of words, right? There's a story that's being told. And when you can tell the story in the right way, when it really hits people on a very emotional level, then that's essentially what's going to move people in the direction that you want, right? Storytelling is huge if you want to persuade people and influence them in the way that you wish to. So that's number one, an energy of words. There's an energy to words. Number two, masses of people are predictable, though an individual person is not. The exception does not disprove this rule. So this comes down to it's hard to sell one person, but it's easier to sell a lot of people. This is something, again, where in your marketing efforts, you need to have a lot of proof, and there needs to be a lot of social proof. This is testimonials, reviews, case studies, other people speaking about how awesome you are. You can talk about how awesome you are to one person, but it's really easier to show examples of other people that have used your products or services and had success. And you can't just have one person, you need to have many different ones, especially these days when trust is so finite. This is something where you definitely need to have something where social proof is one of the key elements to sell people, right? Let's use, for example, there's a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini, and I highly recommend that if you're a marketer, you need to read that right now. There's a section where he goes deeply into social proof and what exactly it is, and he goes into this where there's a couple of psychological things, specifically the bystander effect, where if people see someone doing something, they're not going to do it themselves, but if they see other people taking action, then they're more likely to do that. There's this classic case in the 60s, I think, of Kitty Genovese in Queens, where she was, I believe, murdered and killed. And what happened was she was getting beaten, and there was all these people just watching. But because everyone thought someone else would just come in and help, no one helped. But if someone, even one person goes in and helps, then other people are more likely to do that. It's like when you see someone in an accident on the street. I've seen this many times where someone will fall and then multiple people will rush in and try and help them. But I've seen people fall and I've seen other people just looking and be like, "Oh, are you gonna go in and help?" But then again, I see it, and again, because people really feel that social pressure, they're more likely to actually do that stuff. I've also seen this commercial where they have this woman go into this room and people in this waiting room, and all the people just start standing up and sitting down, and she feels compelled to do so for whatever reason, just because of that social pressure where it's like the normal. She's trying to feel normal because human beings basically, when we get outside of our comfort zone, our brains do whatever it takes to put us back into homeostasis where we need to kind of have that regulation. It's the same thing where I think the average body temperature is 77 degrees from what I recall. Anytime your body goes outside of that, whether it's you get too hot or too cold, your body will naturally do whatever it takes for you to get back to that ideal temperature, right? So this is something, again, where people want to fit in, right? They don't want to stand out in the crowd. So again, if you can make them feel like they fit in and you can make them feel a higher status, this is a huge one, and make them actually like feel more important than the other people, that's very appealing, right? So again, anytime, whether you're doing advertising and marketing, you need to really just try and appeal to a lot of different people. And basically have all of your messaging be backed by, again, all of those psychological things that I just discussed, right? The bystander effect, the idea of conformity, social pressure, trying to fit in, increasing their status, and just the general survival instinct as well. Because if you think about this, human beings grew up in tribes of about between 100 150 people, and essentially what would happen is if we didn't fit in, then basically we would be banished and exiled from that tribe, and then we'd have to survive on our own, which is very hard. So you're appealing to that survival instinct in people. All right, so we've talked enough about number two. Let's go on to number three, which is intellect and emotion are partners who do not speak the same language. The intellect finds logic to justify what the emotions have decided. Win the hearts of people, their minds will follow. This is a huge, huge principle in any kind of persuasion. You need to appeal to people's hearts instead of their logical mind. In any kind of sales situation, when you try and sell someone, they're going to backwards rationalize what they bought based on the way that they felt during that transaction. This is super important with people. And if you think about this, in any sort of argument, logic rarely wins, right? This is why it's important to, I don't personally make decisions when I'm hungry or I feel lonely or I feel tired or I feel angry or I don't know, I guess maybe as well if I feel like and felt intoxicated, maybe I had a couple of beers. I'm not going to make any important decisions in those spaces. And again, those are the spaces where, again, you're being more emotional than you usually do, right? So when I'm in one of those states, what I want to do is step away and then think about this in a logical way. And again, not take anything if I feel angry, because all those things that I discussed are emotions, right? So when I'm in one of those states, I have to logically kind of pull myself out of those and then make the decision based on a logical stance. And this is the this is a mistake a lot of people make, is that in their lives in general, that they really trust on their emotions too much, when in some cases the way that they feel might not necessarily be the way that they should do. I see this all the time with gambling with people, when it's like, okay, like why would you place this bet or this wager? And they're just like, oh, like it just felt like the right moment. I could feel it. And it makes no logical sense whatsoever. But again, if you want to persuade people and into a direction that you want, again, appeal to their emotions. This is stuff that can be used for evil as well. So please do not use this for evil. Your grandkids are going to find out about this. So do not do that. All right, I think we've talked enough about that. I'll actually cover more of this third one in a little bit as well, but let's move on to number 4, which is time and money are two sides of a single coin. No person gives you his time until he has first given you, or no person gives you his money until he has first given you his time. Win the time of people, their money will follow. All right, if you think about this, we live in a time where everything's happening so fast, so time has become the new currency. A lot of people think that, a lot of people want to get a good deal, and that's true. But if you look a lot of people that have a lot of money, for them, it's like, yeah, I already have, like, I don't mind spending the money. Like, how can you solve this problem and save me a lot of time? And they have the money. And again, this is where it doesn't, your price becomes irrelevant at that point, when you can really just save people a lot of time. When you look at convenience stores, for example, they charge a lot more than all the other places where you can get it less expensive, but because it's convenient, because it's going to save you time, because you're going to receive it faster, then you're very likely to just purchase that same thing at a higher price point than anywhere else where you could, that's going to waste you time, where you're going to have to drive further or walk further. Basically, this is why companies like Uber have been so successful, because they save a lot of people time. They don't have to wait for a cab to come by. They can basically just, again, open up their phone, buy that. This is why the phones are so huge and apps are so huge. When you create an app, you want to make sure that you're saving people's time. They don't care about how much money it costs if it's saving them a lot of time. We live in an era where people have more money than ever. We live in the most prosperous time in all of man. It is the best time to be alive ever. People who complain that it's difficult to make money, it's really their mindset. I don't want to go further into this, but the best way as well to get people to buy from you is to get them to invest their time. I know a relationship coach, and the one thing that he tells me, because he works in the dating for men niche, he tells me basically that men are turned on like a light switch. For us, it doesn't take that much. We're turned on and off very easily. By the way, if you have kids, time to cover their ears. I know this is getting into a little bit of PG-13 content here, but we'll definitely try and keep it family friendly. But then with women, it's something where they need a little bit more to be, kind of turned on in some cases, right? They're more of like a volume knob. So this is something, again, where a lot of people make that mistake, right? They try and get that quick sale. They try and just turn it on and off, where it's like, you buy, and will you buy now? Will you buy now? Going for like that quick, hard close sale. But again, in some cases, it takes that time, where it's like the more time you invest and, the more time that you take to make them feel comfortable, and then eventually you can get them to ask for the sale. You need to get them to build their trust, get them to spend their time with you. And then once they have that time, it's going to make it a lot easier for them to kind of rationalize and feel good and then basically buy from you as a business owner. So such a big mistake that so many people make when it comes to time and money. It's like, and again, this is why if you have a lot of people who spend a lot more money, like you sell very expensive things, which are like, $100,000 to maybe even $300,000 packages. This is again where those people who buy, like you need to shorten your sales process for those kinds of people. I've seen people where it's like, oh, I'm going to get these people to watch like a 3-hour presentation. It's like, no, those people have like no time. Those CEOs you're trying to market, like they're working probably 70, 80 hours a week at what they do. So the best way to get them to do something is just to give them something super fast. And that's basically what they do want to do. They're like, how do you save me time? It's like, cool, this is how I save you time. And that's like, awesome. I'll buy just based on that. All right, number 5. Sight and sound function differently in the mind, with sound being the surer investment. Win the ears of the people, their eyes will follow. Oh, man. When I heard this recently, it made me pivot my entire thing. He goes very in depth into this principle in book number 2 of The Wizard of Ads, Secret Formulas of The Wizard of Ads. Dude, this guy goes so deep into this subject. This made me pivot my entire marketing strategy into podcasting because I know voice technology in the 20s is going to be absolutely gigantic. And I've seen how many people download podcasts. I've seen how big this space is. So this made me pivot into really focusing all of my content on podcasting based stuff. All right. In fact, let me talk about this. In book number 2, he talks about the way the brain is constructed, right? And even going back to intellect and emotion, there's people who have that emotional, or there's 2 sides of your brain. There's the right side, which is more creative, emotional based stuff. And then there's the intellectual, logical left side of the brain. But there's this specific area in your head called the Broca. And it is actually very placed conveniently closely to both sides of the both hemispheres, but at the same time, it's also located very closely to the prefrontal cortex. All right. The Broca is actually where sound is turned into words. All right. So when you think about this, if you can appeal to have sound is really memory based, right? Like you see something and you forget it, but you hear something and it sticks inside of your head. I worked with this one German girl once, okay? And she was basically, one day we're working together and she's dancing around, having a great time and just like singing this one, like, rock your body, rock your body. She kept saying this. It was some like random dance song she'd heard from the night before and it was stuck inside of her head. And she kept saying it over and over and over again. So it's like this with any song, with any jingle, with anything you hear. This is why radio advertising is very powerful and very overlooked, and now it's basically just podcast based stuff where you can just get inside of people's heads a lot easier than from them seeing things. Sure, design is very important and visual stuff is definitely very appealing to men, I'd say especially, and definitely women as well, based on all their fashion and accessories and all of that stuff. But sound is intrusive, right? You can't stop sound. When you hear something very loud and very audible, you're like, whoa, what happened there, right? And you stop. And whereas it's why horror movies are so good. All of the horror movies, it's like, sure, the visual is scary, but the sound effects, like those are really that extra touch that really just hits your emotions on a very awesome level, right? Oh man. All right. People misinterpret branding a lot. They think branding is the visual. They think it's the logo, the typography, all of that. Sure, that's good to get into visual branding, which is very important. But if you want to get inside of someone's head, have your brand them, again, with some sort of auditory sound-based thing to really get inside of where they are. Because again, it's intrusive. Branding was actually created by Pavlov. And Pavlov, I believe, won the Nobel Peace Prize, or sorry, not the Nobel Peace Prize. He won, I think, the Nobel Prize in Psychology in the early 1900s for this. And again, he had his dog, and all he would do is he would have basically that thing where he's like, okay, dog comes by and then, he eats meat. And it's like, oh, every time he eats meat, let's start ringing a bell, right? And then what happened eventually was he would just ring the bell and the dog would come by expecting to be fed meat. So it's like, dinner time, ring the bell. All right? It's the same thing with humans, right? In fact, this is why tobacco cannot be advertised on the radio or TV, right? Because it's sound based. This is why with Facebook and YouTube and a lot of these other video based platforms like Vimeo and Wistia, a lot of the website builders now and a lot of these platforms, they completely turn off sound right away because it's so intrusive. I know with autoplay videos, one of the big problem a lot of people faced last year was that they turned off the autoplay so the sound wouldn't come in right away. And the sound is the main interrupter, right? It's like that main thing. It's very, again, centralized to memory, but it's located near the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. So when you get someone in that specific sound part of their brain, that's the best way to appeal to their intellect and the emotions at the same time, but also be at the same time because it's located to the prefrontal cortex, which is the action-based side of the brain and really just focus-based side. Appealing to having your stuff sound-based, like that's really where it is. And again, you've seen me, I've pivoted all of my marketing towards this podcast-based stuff because I believe it's super important in the future because podcasting and voice technology will be huge in the future. All right, so I've gone on enough about that, and yeah, it's basically just the frequency, right? Sound is frequency, and it's the same thing with music. This is why people love music because it's sound based. All right, number 6. Opportunity and security are inversely proportionate. As one increases, the other must decrease. High returns are gained from low-risk strategies only through the patches of time. He who will cheat time must embrace the risk of failure. All right, so this goes not just for, I believe, making money in advertising, but this goes into making money yourself, right, as an entrepreneur, because you can take this as a 9-to-5 employee, right? The more comfort you have and security in a job, the less money you're likely to make because, again, you're not going out there and really risking anything, right? Anytime that you're in that, this is a side note, anytime you're in that zone of complacency and comfort as a human being, you have to somehow get yourself out of that if you want to be more successful, right? You have to disrupt yourself, get out of that comfort, get out of that security zone because there's a lot of opportunity out there. And again, this is something where if you look at this with gambling, for example, and even with advertising, it's something where the more that you spend, the more you're risking, obviously, right? So with certain online platforms, you can advertise for very inexpensive, like $5-10 a day if you want, which is like nothing. So if you have if your advertising budget is, I don't know, $100 for a month, which is like nothing. That's like inconsequential amount of money for a business, especially. If your advertising budget is that, you can run Monday to Friday, $5 per day for an entire month. That's a $100 easy thing. And you can basically just set that up on a schedule or on Google Ads, Facebook ads, pretty much any online advertising platform. But that's not very risky, $100, right? It's different if you're spending $1 million a month on just one of these channels to advertise on, because that's a huge ad spend. There's obviously a lot more risk in that, but there's a lot more opportunity, right? This is why it's important to understand in advertising that there's a break-even point where you should try to spend every dollar you put in, you should try to get at least $1 back on your front end side of your business. On the back end, because you own your customer database and list and your buyers list, that's where all the free money is, right? But when you're advertising, you're trying to acquire new customers. And again, if you're spending $1 and you're not making $1 back, that's too bad. You should try out a different strategy. But if you're spending $1 and you're getting $2 back, that's awesome, right? Or maybe you're getting $3 back, like that's super awesome. Maybe you're putting in $1 and you're getting like 100 back. That's insane. Then it's like, okay, let's spend a little bit more, see if we can make even more back, right? And it's like, okay, let's take a risk. Again, not be completely reckless. Let's take a risk, spend a lot more, and see if we can get an even better return on investment, and then just blow everything up. So this is with a lot of businesses too, where I see them like I'll see them make money, and it's like, okay, let's take all the profits and then reinvest it all into systems and people and doing that. And it's like, yeah, no, you should definitely like do a little bit of that at a time, but it's like you need to be reinvesting all that money for that. Like deal with the sales, and once you have a winning ad, like dude, spend all of it. Like go all in. Like literally, it's not a gamble, it's an investment. It's not a gamble. Advertising should never be a gamble. It should be an investment in improving your business and acquiring more customers, but ideally providing more value to the world, building an awesome business that is sustainable in the long term. And again, if you want to do that, you're going to have to kind of, in some cases, choose between whether you want to be a bigger business or whether you want to just kind of stagnate for a little bit. And there's times when that might be an option, but the only way to really grow the business is to just keep spending on advertising, right? This is why buying individual stocks in the stock market is risky because you never know what's going to happen with that. But buying index funds long term, because index funds have consistently gone up. If you look at it, it's like a gradual growth over time because it's an investment in all the markets in a specific country. Then that's something you should invest in for the long term. But again, you're not going to have those as high returns on a stock, right? You might have something where you might buy one tech stock, for example, and it double, triples, quadruples, even 10x's in a specific amount of time. And then from there, you can sell it and make your money, right? Or again, you can just take that. And I mean, Warren Buffett, if you look at him, he's just invested in index funds and been successful, and he understands that there's security in those. And because he has a responsibility to all the people that have invested in his company, he basically is like, okay, I need to give them some security. But, this is something, again, where those two are inversed, right? You need to risk something if you want to gain more. Very simple philosophy in life and in the advertising universe. All right, number 7. This one is probably one of my favorites. Engage the imagination, then take it where you will, where the mind has repeatedly journeyed. The body will surely follow. People go only to places they have already been in their minds. This is one of the reasons why Walt Disney and Disney has been so successful, because they're a storytelling company and they just appeal to people's imaginations. People want to escape their day-to-day mundane existences, or even just the day-to-day things where they're like, I need to just kind of clear my mind and see something new. And Disney does that perfectly with their storytelling. Even Walt Disney himself, he would always talk about the future and the vision that he had, and he would put it in place. And when you're telling stories, you need to have people journey into places, again, where they've never been before. And it's definitely something where when you're selling stuff, for example, in your advertising, you need to do this thing called future pacing, which is you're showing people how they look in the future and how imagine what their life will look like. This is a big thing in copy where I do this a lot myself as well, where before I'll actually drop the price, I'll be like, imagine what life will be like when you actually get to that next level. Imagine what it's going to look like to have this awesome sparkling water. Imagine how refreshed you're going to be. Imagine how satiated you're going to be. Imagine how comfortable you're going to feel, because whereas before you were extremely thirsty and you were very concerned about getting water inside of you, now you don't have to worry about this. And even more, it's very, very clean, crystal clear water. Just like it's water from Fiji. I don't know, whatever. Again, you want to appeal to people's imagination and put them in the future where it's like, imagine what life is going to be like once you have this product. Like you're going to feel refreshed. You're going to feel a lot more comfortable. You're going to feel like you're going to be able to do more. You're going to have more energy. Basically just future pace people, put them in the future. It's like with clothing. The best way to get people to buy clothing is to show it on other people. When I see people where they're like, hey, check out my shirt on their e-commerce stores, I would always like cringe in the past. I'd be like, all right, sure, like it's a mock-up of your shirt, but it's like you're selling the person in the shirt, but you're also selling what they're going to feel like wearing that shirt and really what they're trying to represent and the emotions they're going to have when wearing that shirt. That's what you're trying to sell. You're trying to create that mental vision and really painting a picture inside of people's head as to where they're going to be. So this is something as well where, again, the key word, I think, this sentence here where it's where the mind has repeatedly journeyed. There's a big thing that a lot of people do where they just think that they're going to show someone an ad and it's going to work right away for someone. It's something where you have to get the person to get to that, go on that journey and that end destination multiple times inside of their head first. You can't get them to do that. So when you're writing stories and sales copy, for example, and ads, you need to get that person to visualize it like multiple times in their head. It can't just be one time. The amount of frequency you need to have, if you can get them thinking about that more and more and more and more through stories, then eventually you're going to be able to persuade them into taking the action that you wish them to take. But again, everything happens inside of the mind. The mind is extremely powerful, right? Like the human brain has built insane amounts of things, and this is really what separates us again from all of the other animals that exist, right? It's our imagination, it's our visions, and it's like this in a lot of cases, right? When you look at all the books in the past, a lot of the stuff from them has happened now because of a lot of the imaginations of people, right? People have these crazy ideas and like, could I do that? And then again, they see it in their mind first and like, yeah, I could do that. So when you want to persuade someone to do something, again, get them thinking about themselves in the future. All right, I think we've done enough today. This is almost longest episode so far, which is 30 minutes long. Wow. Really appreciate you listening to the end, and I'm sure you gained some awesome tips. So you can actually get the free PDF of these Wizard of Ad books if you like them, and the audiobook. This guy's crazy. If you go to rhw.com, I believe it's / you'll learn, you'll cry, where it's like you'll learn you'll cry. So go there or just type in Wizard of Ads. You can get his books there. This guy makes thousands of dollars training people on sales copy in any case, but maybe you're a nerd like me and you like having awesome books and you're building a sweet marketing and copywriting book collection, then yeah, I'd totally invest in these. They're totally worth it. It's something, again, where you can just have it on the go, flip through it, which I do sometimes. I'm like, oh, what did he say? Okay, cool. Like, now let me see if what I'm doing here is works with this. And again, these 7 laws I've given you are huge. If you really want to go in depth in these, then get these books right here. And if you did like this episode, I would like you to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you can give it a thumbs down. I'm not gonna hate on you. Don't worry, bro. It's cool. I understand. It's funny, these books, by the way, have like very low, I don't know, I'm not even an affiliate of this guy, I should be, but the reviews in some cases are very low, and sometimes when I read these for like copywriting books, I'm like, I wonder if that was by another copywriter that exists out there because he doesn't want other copywriters to read this book and get better, get as good as him. I think that is the